I'm back after several weeks of being the laziest woman on the planet. For years and years since the beginning of time, psychiatrists and various scientists have studied fear. Fear is a core human emotion, and what makes it so fascinating is that although fear is thought to not be a pleasant experience, studies have actually shown that people love to be scared. This is because some of the same brain chemicals involved in our fight or flight survival response are also used when we feel happy or excited. However, there's a difference between the rush of adrenaline you get when watching a horror movie and being in actual danger. If you're jump scared during a movie, your brain is able to quickly adjust and realize there's no real danger. But if you were actually being chased by a murderer, your brain would know it's time to get your ass the fuck out of town, change your name, and never return. That brings us to today's topic of haunted locations. And whether you believe in the paranormal or not, you can't deny that the stories behind these places will send shivers down your spine. Shrieking skulls will shock your soul, seal your doom tonight. And today, I'll be going over some of the most haunted locations in the world. So grab your popcorn, a cozy blanket, and join me for a journey of death, despair, and absolute scare. Hello, kings, queens, and everything in between. I'm Lizzie, and if you're new, welcome. If you're not new, welcome back. I cover everything from the goofy and silly to the dark and disturbing. So without further ado, let's begin. 1. Eastern State Penitentiary. We're starting off this list in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania with the Eastern State Penitentiary. Opening in 1829 in the 19th century, it was actually a prison created as an experiment. You heard that correctly. The experiment to reform criminals by means of strict isolation with their only contact in the form of daily visits from the guards and the warden, which eventually became the model for prisons throughout the country and eventually the world. The prisoners would eat alone, sleep alone, exercise in the yards alone, not even having contact with other prisoners. It was essentially solitary with some outside time on occasion. When the prisoner would leave, a black hood would be placed over their head to make sure the solitary continued. Solitary confinement has been known to drive anyone to insanity, which is what happened to many of the prisoners there. From 1913 to 1970, it became a regular prison and even held some of the world's most infamous criminals, such as bank robber Willie Sutton and the American gangster Al Capone. Since being abandoned in 1971, there have been reports of shadowy figures, a dark figure in the guard tower, evil laughter from cell block 12, ghostly faces in cell block 4, banging of cell doors, and distant talking when nobody else is there. 2. Waverly Hills Sanatorium. In what is today known as Waverly Hill in Kentucky, in 1883, Mayor Thomas Hayes purchased what would eventually become the sanatorium to be a home for his family. Noticing no schools were close enough to take his children to, he established the house as a one-room schoolhouse and hired Lizzie Harris as the school teacher. At the time, Louisville, Kentucky had the highest rate of tuberculosis deaths, and they needed a hospital to accommodate everyone getting sick. And thus, what once was the Waverly Hills Schoolhouse became the Waverly Hills Sanatorium, where it is believed that as many as 63,000 people died there, although only being able to occupy 400 patients at a time. The staff would reportedly neglect and abuse patients, doing experimental treatments that were dangerous, forced exposure to the outside when they were often way too sick to handle it. However, the most controversial was that was known as the body chute, which some people call the body slide or even the death tunnel, where dead patients were taken down and piled up to either be burned or cremated, many of which had suffered abuse by the staff, which helped speed up their deaths. People have reported screams from empty rooms, footsteps, sudden cold spots, and incoherent voices, as well as full-body apparitions. 3. Tower of London. Built between 1078 and 1100 by William the Conqueror, it is known as one of the most haunted places in the UK. In the Tower of London, there was Tower Green and Tower Hill. Tower Green was where high-ranking nobles and royalty were executed by beheading privately, and Tower Hill was for public executions, also by beheading. One of their most infamous executions was that of Anne Boleyn, who was the second wife of King Henry VIII and was executed on accusations of adultery, which is quite hypocritical as the king had been fooling around with Jane Seymour all that time and even had a child with her, which I did not have to look that up because, yes, I've seen the musical Six. Shut up. Divorced, beheaded, died, divorced, beheaded, survived. I know the story. Boleyn was beheaded in 1536, and her headless body has been seen walking through the corridors, often near the spot where she was executed. Lady Jane Grey, who was also beheaded, has been spotted. However, what most talk about is the appearance of two children who have been seen in the rooms of the castle, holding hands with a look of pure fear on their faces. People believe that these children are two princes who were sent to the tower after being revealed to be illegitimate, where they vanished and their skeletons buried underneath the staircase in the White Tower. 4. Banff Springs Hotel. Debuting as Banff Springs Hotel in 1886 in Alberta, Canada, it was originally created when railway workers stumbled upon several mineral springs in 1883. Although known for being pretty on the outside, on the inside is where secrets and horrors lie. In the hotel, an incident occurred after a bride panicked that her dress was on fire and fell down the staircase, breaking her neck and dying. And she has been reported to be seen in the ballroom and on that same staircase. There was also a family murdered in room 873, and they're often seen in the hallway outside of the room due to that room being blocked off. Former bellman Sam McCooley, who has since passed away, often likes to help guests in their room, turning on the lights and opening locked doors. And if you try to tip him or make conversation, he suddenly vanishes without a trace. 5. Island of the Dolls. Known as one of the strangest haunted locations in the world, located in Xochimilco, Mexico, and known as La Isla de las Muñecas, or Island of the Dolls, legend states that three young girls to be exact, were playing near the water in the 1920s, and one of the girls fell in and drowned. People believe that her soul was never able to leave the island, and people often refuse to go there because of what they might find. Once a man named Julian moved there, he claimed that the girl who had drowned had begun to talk to him, telling him that she was stuck on the island and couldn't leave, and he began to buy dolls for the girl to play with, even selling his fruit and vegetables just to buy more dolls for her. Julian later stated that he had begun to fear she wanted to take his soul and make him die in the same way she did, from drowning. And the same day he said this, his nephew found him face down in the same spot the girl had died 70 years prior. As dolls are in every corner, if you choose to go there, people have reported whispers from the dolls, seeing the ghosts of both the girl and Julian, and the eyes of the dolls following their every move. 6. Penhurst Asylum. Formerly known as Eastern Pennsylvania Institution for the Feeble-Minded and Epileptic, and built from 1903 to 1908, it was once seen as a model institution for people with disabilities. It was built in order to segregate people with disabilities from the rest of society, as it was located in a dense forest where it was hidden away, labeling patients as defective, deviant, degenerate, and unfit. Every new patient or resident was classified into 3 categories: mental, where they'd be classified as an imbecile or insane, which was their way of saying intellectual disability or psychiatric disability; physical, where they'd be classified as epileptic or healthy, so physically healthy or physically disabled in some way; and dental, where they'd be classified as poor, good, or treated. the asylum could only hold 500 people, but eventually 2,800 people were living in the asylum, so the facility became overcrowded and severely understaffed, with no funds to attract more people for their staff. The residents had day jobs, some of which included shoemaking, farming, sewing, baking, painting, and other various tasks. The staff mistreated the patients, often referring to them as potential criminals, giving very painful and unnecessary injections to torture the residents, placing residents in solitary confinement when it wasn't needed, having all their teeth removed forcefully, and repeatedly hitting and beating the residents until evident bruising. The asylum eventually received a court order to close because of the mistreatment, and the patients were moved to community homes in 1987. People have been known to witness shadowy figures of the people that died there, most notably a child in the hallway. Colorful orbs of light, objects moving for no reason, lights and electronics malfunctioning, trip lines going off for no reason, and some ghosts showing up in photos, especially in the basement, which no one is allowed to enter. So that's going to be it for this video. If you enjoyed, then consider subscribing if you'd like. We have a lot of fun over here and cover pretty much everything that there is to imagine. Which, if you do have any suggestions, please leave them down in the comments below. I am always looking for new video ideas. I love you all, stay safe, and never let anyone take your crown.